Yes, thank you very much for being so patient.
Oh, that's all
I'm
right.
not doing so well with these Zoom meetings.
Yeah, we're having a few glitches. So, okay. Well, I know we've got a meeting coming up. Or I'm not going to be there, by the way. Just I don't have anything on the agenda, so I'm not going to be Zooming twice tonight. So the first topic, everybody hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so the first topic is, it's just a brief update on where we're at with what's historically been known in the city as the joint planning area. When I came here in 2008, our general sewer plan called this area the JPA. JPA stands for Joint Planning Area, or let's just talk about it later. It's one of those two things. And so where we're at now is with recent developments on Sydney, north of Sedgwick, and with working with our sewer engineer, and then with the Stetson Heights development, and then everything that happened with all the rush developments, 5-10 years ago, we now have kind of an established series of basins. So we've got, if you go from top to bottom, from bottom to top, you can see you've got this south basin that's kind of contributing to either a rehabbed Albertson's pump station. We're currently working with the Stetson Heights folks on that. We've got we got the Lowe's pump station, which was designed originally as a regional pump station. And they actually have a latecomers, and the city had them over-design that to take this entire JPA, but they can't get there. So it's really a pump station that's never gonna see its capacity. And then we have this pump station that's proposed, which is the South Basin, and we're working with the property owners for that. And then the North Basin, we're working with the property owners there. So let me grab. So in your packet, you've got this drawing, and again, this is more informational, so that you can see that we have identified the need for Albertsons to get upgraded to a certain level, and that we're working with developers on 2 additional pump stations, one south of Ruby Creek and one north of Ruby Creek. So again, at this point, this is just information to let you know that the JPA is no longer a big question mark, that we're trying to address capacity issues that have historically been Albertsons and its limitations. And we did just send a letter again out to Stetson saying that they could have, correct me if I'm wrong, Jack, we had like 170 ERUs with some modifications, but that they also had to participate in the South Basin.
Correct. And the 100 of them could be the potential for permanency, but the other 70 needed to be temporary to be moved to the South Basin. And also there's the second collection or force main you didn't mention.
Yes. Yeah. So there's another force main associated with these pump stations that are the 2 blue Ps. But yeah, there was at one time, there was a concern that Stetson thought that all they had to do is make some modifications to Albertsons for their entire 600 or so. And we just needed to make sure we revised their letter a number of times, make sure that they had an interim amount to deal with cash flow, but that ultimately they were going to have to join into this South Basin pump station, the new one, because Albertsons isn't, unless they wanted to contact Albertsons corporate in Idaho and obtain property to put in wet wells and things. So that's where we're at.
So just FYI, as long as we're talking about that JPA, I've also been on the phone and emailing with Grant Middleton, which is now their engineer, about the water side of things and what's going to happen there. So,
right, and that has to do with the booster.
Exactly.
And we'll talk about 13. I think we got some good information there. So I guess if there's any questions, this was just a quick so that, we're really working on this JPA sewer wise as well as water. Okay, so the next item, there's a lot of information in your packet if you didn't have a chance to memorize it yet. This is going to be pretty high clip because Cindy's going to give a presentation at the next SAC committee meeting about it. No, this is really, this is a game changer in the world of sanitary sewer treatment for the entire Western Washington. And so we've got some information in the packet that really kind of talks as to what it is, how it evolved. There's kind of a history of this nutrient cap. It really was kind of again, ecology trying to find a common ground with the extreme left, so to speak, to stay out of a lawsuit. Unfortunately, it's still going to have a massive impact on everybody's treatment plants. And so I know this is going to be discussed at the next SAC meeting, correct, Jackie? Randy's going to...
I don't know if Randy's planning on it, but I planned on it. I mean, I'm going to put it on the agenda. I don't know if he has it there. The thing is, it's all sewer treatment plants that have NTPES permits that discharge into Puget Sound is who's affected.
Yeah, this is, and we're not talking small dollars here. We're talking potentially billions of dollars. And it's also now evolved into city of Tacoma, which obviously Tacoma has that Tacoma utility. It's a fairly large entity in the state for utilities. They've actually introduced a game changer, which has to do with the language that they're putting into their permits, which, for all of us that were living pre-GMA, and then when GMA came out with predictability as a key component, and ever since they've had GMA and predictability, storm drainage vesting went away, and that was a big deal to the developers. And now we have this new nutrient cap unintended consequence that's now, to me, it's touching GMA predictability again. The city of Tacoma is now basically going to be putting on their permits that the city reserves the right to rescind a certificate prior to issuance of occupancy. That's a game changer. I mean, everything that was promised in GMA under predictability is slowly being pulled away by ecology. Storm drainage vesting, now sewer vesting. And so, again, we're not going to get into a lot of discussion on this other than to let you know that this is the next battlefield when in the 80s and the 90s, water rights was this massive battlefield. To me, this is our next, because we kind of went through the storm thing. The state finally said there is no storm drainage vesting, as much as everybody tried to hold on to Noble House versus Pierce County vesting rights in the 90s. This is a significant, it's like a coup. So we're just going to have to sit back and stay apprised of where this takes us.
Can you guys see this letter?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, this is the language that we added this is our letter of sewer capacity. And so this is what we have been discussing internally and adding that deals with the fact that our permit runs out December 31st, 2023. And after that, if they push this new nutrient law, a cap at us, we don't know that we're going to be able to. So this is basically a disclaimer for our sewer capacity letter.
But you would think that the home builders would have a major issue with this because there are no guarantees.
Well, I think they will once they learn of it.
Mark, I have a question in regards to this. This is this nutrient permit. We're talking specifically the wastewater treatment facility, but what's next with stormwater? I mean, I could see stormwater being a major contributor to nutrients in the sound and our how soon are they going to mandate some kind of treatment plant for stormwater?
Well, that's a good question, because we know that, you know, the history of storm drainage was you only had MPDS permits on point pollutant discharges, treatment plants for sewer, but everything else was a non-point. So then the pendulum started to move with all these studies that led to the TMDLs in the bays, the total daily
Right.
load. Then you started having marinas and golf courses, and everybody have to look at BMPs that came out of these watershed studies. And then that ultimately led to the MPDS permit for construction. And then the MPDS for construction, which is still a non-point, you still have the vesting for mitigation. Then you had cities, the phase 1 and the phase 2 permittees, that then had to, we have to manage our MS4 system and be in compliance. And so you're right, they've taken away vesting for storm drainage. They've now permitted storm drainage with our own MPDS permit. The next step will be the effects of dissolved oxygen from urban runoff,
Right.
needing to be treated.
I still have nightmares of when primarily the feds, but ecology was in part of that discussion, when they came to the community and said, you will put in secondary treatment. And that was a major expense. I'm getting, I don't know, shivers thinking that they're going to come in and tell us that, well, now you need a treatment plan for your stormwater.
Well, and then you think of all the millions of dollars that jurisdictions spent on uncombining their combined sewer overflows.
Yeah, exactly.
They had to take sewer out of it. So now you're going to have a separate collection system. You'll probably see someday that because of the Clean Water Act and the EPA, you're probably going to see a day when sewer treatment plants, even in the state of Washington, are tertiary, and storm drainage is now going to be treated as well.
Yeah. Makes me nervous.
For me,
well,
the thing about this, where they're going with this stormwater treatment is these injection wells to let it naturally filter through the ground. But what is that going to do with all the petroleum products that are potentially going into the aquifers?
Yeah.
Right, well, that's ecology's solution to everything, is just put it back in the ground until you start contaminating the aquifers.
Right.
Okay, well, anyway, this was more of a, this is a to be continued. This is just more of the initial, this is coming down the pike, and we'll be talking about this a lot more in years to come. But to me, there's already a major battle brewing, which is the whole reservation certificate conversation.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next thing that we're going to jump into, and I'm going to let Jackie lead most of this. As you know, we're updating our water system plan, and a part of that was to update our capital improvement project list. And we also had Katie, and so Katie Isaacson is looking at our CFCs for the updated water CIP in that water system plan. We also did that separate analysis for a general sewer plan update, where we also wanted to get her updated CIPs so that she could be looking at what we're doing with our capital facility charges on sewer. So, and I think some of you have seen these before. If not, it's going to be a bit of sticker shock. But again, we're trying to realistically reflect what we have out there with our infrastructure. And I guess, Jackie, this table doesn't list, it lists the new total, but relative, like for the new water CIP, which is at 43 million, what was it before, like 10 million? Did it go up like 4?
I have the old ones here. Give me a minute.
Just roughly, I think the water CIPs tripled or quadrupled.
Yeah, I think tripled.
Tripled, and I think the sewer doubled.
Yeah.
Okay.
No,
but
the sewer tripled also, Mark, because the Marina pump station tripled.
Okay.
Well,
Yeah.
we don't know that yet. Didn't we just have a meeting that we're dialing that back?
Yeah, I
Right,
think
exactly,
we'll
exactly.
that way,
So to let you know, the reason that these two cells are highlighted is because at press time, when we sent this out, we did not have updated numbers from McCormick Communities at that time. I now have them. That first one, instead of $1 million, should be 2.1 mil, and the 945 should be 1.2. Let's see, yeah, 1.2 mil. Those were not traditionally in our CFC calculations because they were considered developer projects. However, we've realized that by having it in, not having it in the CFC calculations, we were not, we were giving credits against something or we were potentially giving credits against what had not been accumulated in the CFC calculations. So that's why one of the reasons that this is the CFCs are changing so dramatically, and the other is the updated numbers. Right now, the market is really, really hot for contractors to come in, and so all the estimates that we're getting are much higher than were originally anticipated.
So Jackie, another driver to us needing to add these projects to the list too is that the 1998 agreement, which we learned painfully about in the last couple of years, states that these projects are our responsibility, where we've historically thought they weren't our responsibility, that they were going to be the developer's responsibility. So that's how we got in the litigation and the moratorium that we had on sewer, and I don't think that's where we want to end up. Excuse me, that was on water, and we've come to an interim agreement, but I don't think we want to go back to where we were and be faced with litigation. So this, by adding these in, it allows us to get the developer to build them, but then they in turn get a credit back on these capital facilities charges.
And we did spend quite a bit of time with the attorney, finance, public works, making sure that we all agreed, and planning, that we all agreed on what was eligible for a CFC, the percentages, because there was some differing of opinion as we started this. And now I think that we're all, I guess, Noah, you could chip in at this point. I think we're all kind of in agreement now that we understand CFCs a little better and what's eligible, what isn't, and how the mechanism itself works.
Yeah, I'd agree with you, Mark. I think what our hope is that out of this body of work, it's going to be clear for everybody what the credit available for developers will be, so we don't have to continually revisit the issue once the calculation is done with Katie.
Correct.
The one project on here that's different is this 390 to 580 zone booster station on Glenwood. That was a condition of plat approval, so they are on the hook for that and are aware of that. So it appropriately should not be considered in CFC analysis and calculation. The other reason that there are such an increased number of projects on here is because we now have a hydraulic model that works, and we're able to identify through that model some deficiencies in the water system that need to be upgraded as we move down the line. I like to call it an ugly list. It's just things that need to be fixed and upgraded, you know, as a part of doing business in a water system. So that increased the list also.
So this list has been sent to Katie Isaacson for both water and sewer. On sewer, she's working under our sewer CFC update, and on water, she's including her work as part of the water system plan. So we'll be wrapping these up, and at some point we'll be coming back to council when she finishes her body of work for what the new CFC will be.
So before we move to the sewer list, did anyone have any questions about any of the numbers or where they came from or the percentages or anything about this list?
The $1 million for the Foster, did you see that? What is that going to include?
Well, that's the continuation of our foster pilot project, whereby we are looking for our water rights changes.
$1 million?
Rough estimate. We're only at, there are 3 stages of getting to the report of examination that ecology will consider. And we are only at about the middle of phase 2 right now. We have run into some really interesting, well, this is later on in the agenda. Do you want me to go into it now, or do you want to?
Later's fine. It seems, these figures are overwhelming.
Yes, they are.
Yeah, one thing to remember on foster too is that isn't just studies and attorneys. Isn't that mitigation as well, Jackie?
It's the planning for mitigation. The actual projects I'm hoping to get funding for.
Right.
Hmm.
Okay.
So we can move on to the sewer list. Now this number up here, this 15 million, this was the really scary number. And we had a very, very constructive meeting toward the end of last week whereby we've been able to knock this down to about 6 million.
Yeah, we're going to do some VE work and not be so accommodating to what's happening downtown, but still having a good product. But the 15 million number was really twice as what it needed to be when we were looking at other criteria. So we had to focus on what we could do. So it's not as much gold-plated and much more basic now.
Right, and here is the Albertson's pump station upgrades that the developer would be responsible for, because nobody else is going to benefit from that, is why that's left out of here. And here are the 2 lift stations, one on the north side of Ruby Creek and one on the south side of Ruby Creek, that will be able to get the development out there for Stetson Heights and the other developers that have been inquiring. And here's the second force main.
Yeah, I guess speaking of force mains, this isn't on our list, but I promised RH2 I would mention it. We can't lose sight that in the next round of the CIPs, we're going to have to include that second force main to the treatment plant. That came up in our discussion, that there were already some limiting factors in our design, which was the existing force main. We were to address it now, which I'm sure RH2, our engineer, wanted us to. It would have blown things up considerably, but that's another.
Where's that force main at, Mark?
It's not on this list. It'll be on our next.
It's from the Marina
Where's
pump
the
station.
physical location?
Oh, it's the one that goes parallel to the existing force main from the Marina pump station to the treatment plant.
No way.
Yeah. It's always been planned. When we were doing the Annapolis Creek Bridge box culvert, we included force main in that design.
But they're saying that we have capacity for at least 20 years. We just need to make sure that we start getting it into our CFC calculations, is the
It's
point.
just something that we need to be planning for now. It isn't anything that I don't think any of us are really going to have to worry about, but it's something that our successors will deal with someday. And we know where the route is. It's, you know, we talked about it when we were doing the Bay Street pedestrian path that, and then the well 10 project. You know, we're going to be running down Bay Street East. And so, yeah, it's a major project that Tony's going to have to deal with since he's such a young.
I was going to say, I'll probably still be here. So 2036, I think, was the anticipated date that needed to be in.
They just wanted to make sure that we were just making sure that people are aware that that's a major task that's going to have to be addressed at some point.
Is that something, Mark, that could be pushed off further by more storage and/or a different pumping mechanism?
Tony could probably answer this better, but I think it could be pushed out by potentially more storage, even though we have emergency storage in our we had emergency storage in our design, but I think that's one of the things we took out because we put in a diesel powered emergency pump.
That's correct.
We did talk about lining, but I don't know how you would line an active force main. I mean, you can't slip line. You have to take it offline to,
Yeah.
Everybody go on vacation for a couple weeks.
yeah. Yeah, that's the challenge when they talked about, well, you could line it and gain years, but how are you gonna do that on an active line?
I think one of the biggest things was the power demand with the amount of flow that and the pumps that are going to be in there. As far as adding that bigger main, that you're just basically just sucking up power, trying to get over that static head pressure that all the way to the main.
Now, one thing that we could talk to SAC about, and I know that Randy complains all the time about the big influx of flow. I personally think that if the treatment plant constructed a distilling pond upstream of their trash gates, that we could take the peaks off the flows and have that not push into the plant, but daylight, so that you would have less pressure that you're going to be pushing against.
Didn't we do something similar to that, Mark, with I don't remember what we were going to do with it, but we put in that large facility just south of the headworks there.
I thought that was the screw press for the,
No, this was a while back. When we did the expansion of the plant, we put in a rather large, and I'll be damned if I can remember, was it a filtration system or something
I think
that's
that's
more up the hill towards the veterans home?
yeah, I still think that was part of the grit chamber. And I know that Randy Screws is going to be very happy when this is all VFD operated, because the pumps that we had before were, full on.
Right.
But so we could variable speed up and down, but I know that there is not that I know of. I don't believe that there's any kind of a headworks that has a more of a lagoon.
Right.
Where we could, now you got maybe potential odor issues, and so.
And
we're
Mark,
just
where would they put that?
ways-
Where would
You'd
they
have-
put that? That's one of the issues that they have with this nutrient cap, is if they needed not only the cost, but if they needed to add another treatment process or something to the plant, they have nowhere to put it.
Right, we're talking about realistically, there was talk back in the early 90s with Congressman Norm Dix about building a new treatment plant for South Kitsap County out at Clovos Passage. And realistically, this nutrient camp conversation could very easily push us back to that remedy where they would build a new plant, because Clovos Passage is from what I've been told, is the last high flow tidally affected reasonable location for an outfall for a treatment.
You want to talk about the price of a force main, bring up that discussion.
I know. There are no good solutions other than less human beings on the planet.
Barge it over to Seattle.
Mark, has the feasibility of Bay Street being upgraded and pumping directly into the force main been looked at? So basically everything east of Bethel will go to Bay Street and be pumped directly to the treatment plant rather than inundating the marina with additional flow.
We looked at that in 2015, I think, when Adam was still with BHC. They actually did a conceptual where they added a wet well and they changed direction of flow. That's still a conceptual design that I've got documents on, and it's something that we could look at.
I wonder if that would change the model as far as even needing an additional force main.
It's not going to change it a lot, because you're still from Quisenberry east, you're still into the same force main.
Yeah.
Well, the issue I think too is the majority of our flow originates pretty much west of Quisenberry. So the amount I think you would be peeling off by doing Bethel on that hillside would be, relatively speaking, kind of small, I would think.
And that's ultimately what the conclusion was. There was no cost benefit for the cost to retrofit that and purchase property and build that system to reverse the flow. That's when we decided just to do the Vaughn choppers and the upgrade to control system so that function without us constantly pulling out soft clogs, but to maintain it as it's operating. So, okay, well, I think that's that. Obviously more to come when we're actually talking about CFCs in the future. The next item on the agenda is just very quickly, Jackie can talk about a grant that we received from the Department of Health that has to do with our consolidation of water system consolidation.
Yes, we were successful in our grant application for a consolidation study to look at intertying Port Orchard with McCormick Woods. I am working with an engineering firm right now to get a contract finalized to get them working on it. It's only $30,000, so I'm holding the budget of the contract to exactly that $30,000. So it's going to be a quick study. One of the first things that I want them to look at is where and how to lay the main. It's a mile from where our main is now along Old Clifton Road to where we could pick up with the McCormick system. If we go the other way on Glenwood Road, if we can't go overland through Squirrel's property and have to go around, I'm talking with my hands, and have to go around by the fire station that's on the corner of Glenwood and McCormick Woods Drive, I think that is a 2-mile run. So obviously that would be more expensive. One of the things that we have to deal with is the question of fluoridation. McCormick Woods water system is not fluoridated. I can't find records anywhere, and maybe one of you happens to know, of how and why the city of Port Orchard water system was originally fluoridated. If it was a vote of the people, then we're going to have to go back to a vote. And if nobody knows, then that would be my suggestion. But that's another piece that I want the contract recipient to look into.
I don't believe it was a vote of the people. I think it was a decision that we made.
That's correct, John. And I've got a folder in my engineering water called fluoridation, I think, where we did a survey.
Yeah, we did.
That
Yeah.
survey,
Yeah.
we went back, and part of our due diligence was we went back to find out when the city and why the city originally fluoridated. And I do have that folder. I do
Well,
know
I think conversely, the reason that we didn't fluoridate McCormick was because of our intertie with Bremerton, and Bremerton did have a vote
yes.
that they cannot have fluoridation in their system. So in respect to that, and that we are flushing water back and forth, we elected not to fluoridate the McCormick system.
Yeah, that's exactly the case. Bremerton had a vote. We couldn't have the McCormick system. I think the city council for Port Orchard chose, because they had the legislative authority at the time to do so. And if we were to, are we recording this?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Okay. Then we will have to, go through that process. I know that the survey was fairly painful. I can't imagine what a vote would be like.
Well, and we now have, of course, that agreement in place with the city of Bremerton mewhere we're moving towards separation of the two systems there, so that Port Orchard and McCormick McCormick Woods and Bremerton are separate systems. So at that time, it would be when we would want to intertie. But it's just something to kind of put in the back of your head to think about what we're going to do with the fluoridation.
Okay, so Jackie, if you go to engineering water, there's an actual fluoride 2011 folder
Oh, okay.
that has documents in there about survey results and our history, and so forth. So resolutions that go back to 1969, ordinance number 815. 1969.
Remember the ordinance number?
Yeah, ordinance 815. Oh, there was actually
Reading
a vote in 1969.
Oh,
And
you're
it
looking at it. That's what you're doing.
yeah,
I thought you just had that in your head.
no, I've that's the beauty of Zoom is I can go grab stuff.
And here I was going to bow down to you. I thought you just.
I was 9 years old in 1960. Anyway, there's a folder. So let our new consultant look into that.
All right, thank you.
Well, it's popular belief, or contrary to popular belief, I was not on the council in 1969. I graduated from high school in 69. So
Oh, I thought you were, John.
Was that,
no,
John, did you graduate from South?
yes.
Elaine Dorothy is my cousin.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, moving on. Does anybody have any questions on what we're going to be achieving through this consolidation?
No, I think it's great.
I'm back to wondering, would it have to go to a vote?
I think so, based on what I just saw.
When would that be?
After I retire.
Yeah, it'll be several years before we're ready to separate the systems, and we cannot fluoridate McCormick until we separate the systems. So if the vote came out positively that the city city citizens do want us to fluoridate, we'd be between a rock and a hard place because we couldn't do it.
So a quick anecdote, during the survey, which we thought was fairly benign, that was the first time in my life that I was ever attacked by an elderly gentleman with a cane, and I was called a fascist. So to think that a survey is going to be any less painful, we're fooling ourselves.
Well,
I've been called a fascist before, so it felt kind of good.
there were a few people that were very passionate about it. And so that probably had a lot to do with the whole issue.
Well, it's a national issue too. So as soon as the local issue comes in, we started receiving all kinds of, I don't want to say rhetoric, but we were getting, it's almost as a hot topic nationally as Roe versus Wade. We started getting lobbyists that were sending us information, pro and against. We were getting unsolicited documents from dentists. And so it is a national hot button, and you still see it kind of in TV shows, kind of jokes here and there about fluoridation, but it's a serious thing. And when we go embark on the survey, we all have to have our thick skin on. So, okay, well, let's jump to the splash pad. So the splash pad, I think the last time we met and we talked about the splash pad, McCormick was going to do the splash pad for us. We found out that we couldn't do that this has to be a city project. So I put together a request for qualifications to design a schematic and a final ad-ready design. We are using the work that McCormick developed as a template. Those requests, those qualifications or statement qualifications are going to be due at 2 o'clock on the 29th, which is a week from Friday. So this was the concept that was put together. I basically went off that to develop some criteria and a project description because there's no reason to reinvent the wheel. So we will go through a process of selecting a team to design this, and then we'll get an engineer's estimate, and then we'll get it out on the street, and then we'll figure out how we're going to pay for it. Okay, so that's really that. Well, I guess the good news there is we hit basalt, and we thought we were concerned that we were going to hit basalt, or McCormick was going to hit basalt before they found water. but I've been told that they did find 2 water-bearing formations before they hit the salt at 1,500 feet. Is that correct, Jackie?
Yes, that's correct. And I can go into more of that when we talk about the Foster project, because it's kind of a more global picture.
Okay, so if that's that, those updates. So let me, I guess, before you get into Foster, I'll jump down to the well 11 very quickly, just so that you know, well 11 is going to be on your council agenda on the 26th. We have a consultant that we decided, instead of just doing the full design now, that there was a lot of unknown that didn't make it beneficial for anybody to just jump to a $900,000 final design. We decided to do an interim phase 1, 30%. And so that's what this contract is going to be for. We have $300,000 in the budget for this. This is $100 grand. This is a much smarter way to go about getting well 11 designed, so that we can get a schematic, really get our hands around what needs to be done, have an estimate for what it's going to take to do the construction, and then develop the final plans.
I know we've thrown a lot of numbers at you guys. Everybody's familiar with well 11 and where it's located, what it does. Okay, just want to
Well
make sure.
11 is the replacement.
Yep, they know. Yep.
Okay. Okay.
Heads were nodding.
Okay, Jackie Foster.
Okay, so really interesting news that have come out of both well 13 and well 12. There's always been the QVA, which is the aquifer that's basically at sea level, or what we call the shallow aquifer. And then there's QA1, QA2, and QA3. When they analyzed, and they're doing pumping on it now, but when they analyzed the pumping tests from 13, and then they did pumping tests on well 12, when it was completed, they realized what they had was basically a QA4, a new aquifer that is very deep and very protected. And that is the aquifer that both 13 and 12 will be pumped from. So really interesting information. Now, what that does is there is a Kitsap County groundwater model, and that was the basis of our Foster study. Well, PUD has been doing a bunch of work up in Central and North Kitsap, basically proving that the model is wrong. Now we have this information from South Kitsap proving the model is wrong. So in order not to hold up the Foster project at all, we're going to, and we have been having meetings with Fish and Wildlife and the tribes about this very thing, that we're going to basically manipulate the information coming out of the model to take into account the fact that it's incorrect, rather than replace the model. However, I have been talking to WaterPack about the possibility of PUD leading the effort and all of us water systems contributing to updating the model once we get through Foster. So we are, as I said earlier, we're about halfway through the second phase of Foster, which is where we have to look for water rights. The first phase is not taking any additional water out of streams. The second phase is looking for water rights that we can basically put into a water trust, so that the water we take out is replaced by that water that nobody is taking out. We put the rights in a trust. We're about halfway through that phase. Then the third phase is looking at the net ecological benefit of doing stream flow, no, that's the second phase. Stream flow augmentation goes in phase 2, because that's water. The third phase is net ecological benefit of habitat restoration, stream flow restoration projects. So we are getting there. We were held up for a little while trying to get the information out of 11 and 12, I mean 12 and 13, because we were affecting clear out to the Union River, and we needed to know, to be able to show that the model was incorrect. So that's what where we're at with that.
So Jackie, how does us drawing water out at 1,700 feet affect a squirrel?
Well, the thing that the science shows that the deeper you go, when you're pulling water, the more spread out you are that you're affecting. In other words, if you take water out of a stream in QA1, which it may be only 200 feet down, you might affect 400 feet, and I'm just pulling numbers out of the air, 400 feet around you, streams that, but if you're pulling water from 2,000 feet down, you might affect streams that are within 2 miles. Because
you will see the snow cap on Mount Rainier go down.
It's a much less effect, but it's a much broader area that you affect.
It's the swing of the pendulum. The pendulum used to be way over to the right for decades, and now it's way over to the left. So, and as a water purveyor, small city, and we talk about this all the time at the Public Works Board, is, we're in the business of trying to make sure jurisdictions have the ability to maintain their infrastructure. But then you have all these rule changes that just, it's impossible to keep up. So anyway, we're doing the best we can on that. We did get some good news on well 13 today. As you know, we drilled that to 1,700 feet or so. We've been pump testing. We were getting 1,700 gallons a minute out of it today. And they're not finding, I don't think we don't have any documents in. But there's a chance that we don't have iron manganese.
Oh.
Now, there may be some other things that we can treat differently, but we were looking at that overall well 13 project budget. So, knock on wood that we may have some savings actually in the well that we could take over to that Maple Street Road, that increase the cost over there. So we have to wait until Robinson Noble does their final analysis, and we know that iron manganese, the MCL is going to be changing in the future, and we obviously need to design for that future potential lowering of the maximum contamination level. But to know out of the gate, like well 9 was, when it was first drilled, it was already, the natural water was already exceeding the MCL when it was a less stringent MCL. So to have the levels that they're initially getting, I think that's pretty hopeful that we can save some money, hopefully at the treatment site.
Hey, Noah, has Mark ever saved us any money?
Yes.
This might have to do with the fact that we're in that QA4 also, because it's well known, especially in South Kitsap, but primarily Kitsap County and Pierce County on this side of the bridge. There's iron manganese in almost all the aquifers, but like I said, this is a brand new discovery. So,
well, we're down deep enough. I'm surprised we don't have oil contamination in the water.
Or mitigating for dinosaurs or something.
Yeah.
Don't mention
Not
that.
done yet.
Or paying property tax. Or paying property tax to the Chinese government. Anyways.
You guys all know that there's basically no new water in the world. Every drop of water has already been here, so we're drinking filtered dinosaur pee anyway.
Yeah.
It's delicious.
It is, and good for you. Okay.
No, it isn't. You have to chlorinate it.
Okay, so the next item, so what you're seeing right now is this is just as part of the well 11 project, we are looking at different sewer options to save money, because we know that on well 11 we're going to have treatment, and we have to have some ability to get the backwash water out. So we're in conversation with McCormick Golf Course to see if this is feasible. If not, we're going to have to just go directly south to St. Andrews, and it's going to be a very deep, expensive run. So
why would we put it into a vault and pump it? Or is it cheaper just to dig the deep ditch?
We'll have to look at those options. I mean, at the end of the day, it's long term, it's cheaper just to dig the deep ditch and not have to worry about another system to maintain.
Gravity.
Okay, so the next item is just showing progress. So what you've got in your packet is, first, it's the current design of the Station 2. And so what you'll see there at the top of that page is you'll see an L-shaped. It says stairs, control building, all that. So Jackie, go up with your cursor, go just up.
Oh, up.
No, stay on that drawing.
On this-
Go back to the drawing that was up there.
Yeah.
Your cursor right where it's at, leave it there. Okay, right where your pointer is. Okay, so look at that. And now go to the next picture. So go to the next picture.
That one?
Yeah, and so mentally rotate that 90 degrees counterclockwise in your brain. And you can see the stairs forming, and then you can see the control building and all that. So this is just showing you with our drone that we're utilizing all the time now that we have a pilot and we didn't have to sell it on eBay, is that we are getting lots of benefit, and you can see progress is definitely being made on that project.
So the joke Mark was referring to is that the drone sat in a closet for a year, and I told him if somebody can get a license to fly the drone, we were going to sell it on eBay.
I don't think it was a year, but
It was a year.
we ran into some very unintended FAA issues, and then we were trying to coordinate with the police department, and we decided to just go on our own, and we have 2 pilots right now.
2 aviators.
2 aviators, yes.
Mark, did you skip 13 or did I miss it?
I already did 13. I didn't do the Maple Avenue thing because that's nothing but bad news. So
Okay.
No, we got some good news today. Chris said that Mr. Rill signed the documents to let us do the test boring.
Oh, he did. So he's going to allow us to do the test boring. We're kind of over budget on that phase of the project. We have had the shoreline hearing, so we're moving ahead with everything. But the cost of that, getting the water main away from Blackjack Creek, which is critical, is coming in higher, $1 million. Well, 700,000 or so, but I'm hoping that we'll save that potentially with the water treatment on the other side. So more to come on that. And what you're seeing there is basically the Pump Station 2 schedule. Really what's important is that we're wrapping up with this project in October, Q4 of 2020. If you go to the last sheet, well, yeah, you can see that landscaping and restoration, that's all October, November, October 2020. So we'll be wrapping up with that project and have a new pump station to maintain.
Mark, in light of the current pandemic and restrictions and all that, do you think that calendar is still good?
Yep. Yeah,
That will work.
they've been working. We were able to have them work they were never affected by
Good.
shutdown.
Hey, and Mark, when I stepped away earlier, that was Eric Campbell.
I figured so.
And he's aware of it. And if whatever the engineers say, they were told that the adjustments will solve the problem that was by BHC. That's what BHC told them. And so anyway, so we'll talk about that off. So they believe it's solved, but if it's not, they'll fix it.
No, the problem is BHC's suggestion was only an interim.
That's what I told him. That's what I told him. So
Yes, not a long-term fix.
yep.
Do I need to have a conversation with Peter?
No,
Yeah,
we're
but-
good.
Okay.
We don't need to go the attorney route though. They'll do whatever they need to do to fix it.
Okay.
Okay.
But we need an engineer to tell us what the fix is.
Yeah, they need to have their engineer tell us what to fix. And that's what we asked for last week.
Okay.
And then we got the email from RV that said we're not doing anything. So Marina Pump Station. So I think I already mentioned this, that we had a good meeting last week. Oh, it was during our CIP conversation. So this was, we had our 30% completion, and we had comments to that 30%. Since we had a fresh set of eyes, that really wasn't a part of that whole process where we were working with the downtown redevelopment developers and started questioning, well, why would you do this and why would you do that? And so we had a very robust, kind of a fierce conversation. If any of you have ever read the Brené Brown book, we had a pretty fierce conversation about what we could do from a value engineering standpoint, because that $15 million was not acceptable to NOAA and that he wasn't going to fund us. So we had to find a way to get that project under control. And I think we had a very productive meeting. And so we are going to be moving ahead with RH2 60%. We're going to authorize the next phase of the work, and they're going to take it from their current 30% plus these major VE components, price in half, and then get us to a 60%, so that we can, at 60%, we need to make sure we're all on the same page of ultimately where we're going, what it looks like, what it's going to cost. Then we'll go to final ad ready.
It wasn't just NOAA. It was unacceptable to me too.
I know that. I didn't want to. I just wanted to throw NOAA under the bus, though, under the truck.
But yeah, thank you, Mark. It's
Yeah.
garbage truck preferably.
Under the garbage truck, yeah. So I guess with that, if there's,
I have a couple of things that have come up since this hit the press. I just wanted to report that the general sewer plan update is complete. I've reached out to Department of Ecology to figure out exactly how we get that finalized. So at some point it'll come before you. Basically what we were doing was updating the CIP list so that we could have our CFCs recalculated. And in order to do that, there were a couple of pieces of the general sewer plan that needed to be updated along with it. So that will be coming to you fairly soon, hopefully, probably your next meeting. The other thing is, John, you had suggested, or you had said in your reply to the request for moving the SAC meeting to the 17th, that you would prefer a Zoom meeting. So I sent that over to Randy because I knew he had a meeting with his commissioners last night, and they're amenable to that. So if we want to do a Zoom meeting for the 17th, if you prefer that, I can set it up. Or we can do the social distancing in council chambers.
I would prefer a Zoom meeting.
Me too.
It's unanimous.
Okay, great. Then I will set that up for the 17th at 6:30.
Okay.
Great.
okay, so our next meeting at this point is June 16th. I don't know if it's going to be a Zoom or not. I'm assuming it's going to be a Zoom. 'Cause
Yeah.
We'll still,
Yeah,
be in,
Plan
right?
for it.
we'll still be in phase 2. So I guess with that,
So would you send out the meeting invite and then put the link on the notes?
Put the link on the notes. Do you mean the packet that goes with it?
No, well, either way, so we can get to the link. The meeting invite that you sent out didn't have the link to it.
Okay. What I'll do is this, John, when I send it out, I'll send it out as a packet like I did this time, and then I'll send a separate email that only has the link in that it
That
was
works.
successful. Okay?
Yeah,
Yep.
that works. Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
any other questions?
No, we got a few minutes to have a hot dog before the next meeting.
Okay, so I guess, Madam Chair, do you want to adjourn at 6:08?
Thank you. Thank you very much. What I'm not looking forward to is what the rates are going to, what's happening with the rates down the road.
Am I-
It's probably
I'm
not
still-
rates. Go ahead, Jackie.
I'm still recording. Do I stop now or?
Not yet. So I just answer that. Right now, we're primarily looking at CFCs.
Right.
The rates shouldn't be affected dramatically. Anything we've seen, well 13 was 100% CFCs, and I saw that Jackie had it split. I don't know what that split is. I didn't see the percentages, but we're not right now self-sufficient in water. 13 is partly, not a large percentage, but partly to our serving our current customers.
Right.
So it does have a component to rates, but it's primarily also our future water. What is that percentage you think, Jackie? You've got it split now.
Let me grab it right quick. So the well 13 is 75%. And the reason it is 75% is because that's the portion, the 25% of the water rights are being transferred there. So those are existing. 75% are new.
Okay.
That seems pretty appropriate.
Okay.
Then you just don't build a new house.
Yeah,
No, we want the income from the CFCs.
Yeah.
we do. It's
It's just, it's kind of overwhelming to think. Yeah.
Marina Pump Station, though, is a completely different conversation as we work through that. That is our current and future customers. So that will affect our rates.
Right.
As we get farther down the road on that.
Yeah. What did that start at? 1.4, 1.2?
Yeah, no, we got a loan for 6 or 7 million.
We had a grant. We originally had a $6 million grant, and then the wildfires in Eastern Washington, because it was that hazard mitigation grant money, it went away to fight fires. Then we got a $4.2 million loan. So we originally thought it was a $6 million project, and we had a completely, or 6 or 7. It's still a $7-8 million project, but we had at one time completely grant funded.
And that's what we're hoping for well 11 too, is once I start getting some numbers in from the consultants, then there's a thing called WIFIA, which is Water Infrastructure Financing something or other. It's a federal program, and hopefully that we'll be able to grab some of that money.
Wonderful.
Assuming that the federal government and the state government and all of us have any money left.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Are we adjourned?
I'm going to change the ending to 6:11.
6:11. Okay.